regulatory environment, of course, South Africa loves a good bit of regulation. We love making lots of rules, and it's often a very contentious and contested space. So let us get the regulator on, because I think that's important. We've got Dineo Mpahlele, who's from the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority. It was so much easier as the EAAB, but it is a mouthful. Property Practitioners Regulation Authority. We've also got from there Jolie Basserman, Mfundo Daki, and Mamiki Siabela, as well as Johan and Dani van der Merwe are with us as well. But now let's kick off with you, if we can. And just in terms of the role of the regulator and whether or not that role of the regulator has dramatically changed since the name change and all of the trials and tribulations through which the regulator has been very publicly over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, the changes have been there in terms of the PPA, the Property Practitioner Act, which replaced the Estate Agency Affairs Act. So there's quite a number of changes that have been brought about by the new act. The one that I can say is very prominent and is visible is that there is a transformation section in the act. Previously, we did not have that. The Transformation Act is mainly intended to ensure that we bring up programs that are there to benefit the historically disadvantaged individuals. And we also have other sections that deals with consumer protection. And those were not there. For example, there is mandatory disclosure forms that needs to be completed so that we know that the interests of the consumers are protected. Those are the key changes. Others have been there in the previous legislation, such as monitoring of compliance. We do it through inspections, which is on-site and off-site inspections. We also have one of our key roles as maintaining the professional standard of the property practitioner. This we do it by providing education, we provide training and also development. So those are just a few ones that I think they are key, but there's quite a big a mandate that we have to deal with. We can see that from the object of the Act, but these are very key that I've identified.
From act to action, where are you in terms of development of the programs, development of the courses, development of the training? Because it's all well and good to say, yes, this is an industry that needs to be transformed, and then sitting back and putting pressure on the practitioners to do it. What are you doing as the regulator to ensure that those programs are all in place?
What we have done is that the Act also requires us that we have a consultation or engagement with industry bodies in terms of developing the standard of education. But I would want Mfundo as well as the executive maybe to expand on the progress that we have done so far. We have met with industry, we have some sort of agreements in terms of how the standard of education should look, but Mfundo should be able to give us more information.
Yes, Bruce, just to add to what Dina was just alluded to. Indeed, we have new regulations. And in particular, there's a regulation 33.2, which compels or orders the PPRA to conduct consultation processes with industry bodies from various areas of the property sector. And in the process of those consultations, we have to establish the qualification standards, the course materials, professional designation examination, and as well as the standard of practical training. Indeed, we've consulted widely. In particular, we started with the real estate sector. We've made some gains there. I think we are now at a point where we will be looking at the issue of introducing practical training. I think we've issued a communique in that respect. And we have also met with the managing agents. I think the managing agents have been represented by NAMA, which is the National Association of Managing Agents. We've also moved a needle there. We've been able to agree that the applicable qualification standard in this particular sector will be determined at a point where we develop the qualification, because you may say that you want the qualification to be pitched at NQF level 4 or level 5. But now, when you do the qualification development, the content changes the whole shape. So the complexion of what the qualification standard will be clear when we finalize the process of the qualification development. I can also
What
mention
are the
that
time frames here, Vundo? Because I mean, a lot of people I think are quite frustrated by the amount of time it takes for these processes to happen. And yes, it's very, very difficult. You've got a consultant, you've got to get a buy-in, and you've got to get agreement, and all of these sorts of things. But there's time pressure here. I mean, an industry. There's an industry in place. It's a very highly effective industry. It's a highly efficient industry. It would like the certainty, the regulatory certainty, I'm sure. So, what timeframes are we looking at?
Bruce, I'm very happy to indicate that the process of the qualification development has actually begun. It started in January with NAMA, Services SETA, and other stakeholders. A working group has been established. The scoping process has begun. I think before the end of May, we should be able to report favorably to say this is the qualification that has been developed for managing agents. It's not only managing agents, we also have other sectors where we've actually started to develop qualifications. Of course, because the pool is very wide. I mean, we've got about 12 subsectors. So for each of these subsectors, we have to make sure that we go through the same process. But of course, I'm able to say that there are positives that we've been able to achieve.
And in terms of the sort of the broad sort of, again, you don't want to preempt what the findings are going to be, of course, but I think there's been quite a lot of unhappiness within the real estate sector. I think a lot of people have been really apprehensive about what the new qualifications will require. Is this going to be a dramatic change in terms of the way in which this sector is seen to need to evolve, or is it an incremental change? What is the sense that you get so far?
I think what I can mention, which is quite critical, that will be easily identifiable, is that previously, candidates were required to complete internship over a 12-month period. Now, that that period of training has been reduced, so it's going to be 180 days, which is 6 months. And we also had a problem that people would remain interns, perpetually without completing their qualifications and writing exams so that they can be fully fledged non-principals and later on become principals if they want. So now, once the 6-month period is up, you need to write the exams. If you are not able to write exams, then you have to write to us and indicate why you have not been able to write the exams. So it's not going to be an easy thing for people to just sit there and continue being interns, which is a good thing, because it will ensure that there's progression. There's, people are able to move to the next level and become fully fledged property practitioners.
And I mean, a lot of South Africans, I think, are very cynical about regulation and the process of consultation. Can you give an assurance to the property industry that the consultation and the implementation of the feedback is going to be a bit more thorough than, I don't know, let's take NHI, for example. The consultations happened, it all happened in Parliament, pushed through an unworkable bill in the first place that is going to get tied up in the courts for a decade and more in order to get resolved. Regulation, is sometimes carrot, sometimes stick, sometimes a collaboration. What is the tone of this new regulatory environment going to look like?
I think with this particular one, because it's more consultative, it's not a situation whereby we just ram our thoughts down our thoughts down the throats of property practitioners. We actually bring them to the table. We get the sense of what do you think should apply in your space. And I think through the strategy that we are following, we are not going to encounter or are not encountering a lot of problems, because there's usually consensus, because we are very open to suggestions.
Very good. Thank you. Johan and Dani, I'm sure that you've got some very industry-specific questions that you would like to put to the regulators. They are in the room. Let's hear from you.
Bruce, thank you. And yeah, specifically thank you for the PPRA to be willing to share with us today and be willing to open up to the industry. The questions we're going to ask is coming from industry. And I'm going to ask the first question, which has been quite a high topic since the incoming of the PPA. And that is the clarification about the handling of trust account interest. In the Strategy and Fees Boards Act, there was a clear communication that interest should be mandated where it's going. And if there's no mandate, it must accrue to the PPRA. But the property practitioner was allowed to retain 50% of the non-mandated interest when they paid over to the PPA, to the EAB at the stage. The PPA came in. That specific section of the regulation was changed a bit. And there's a specific word that says that the interest that's not mandated may accrue to the PPRA. So on the one side, the industry thinks, well, we may keep the money that we've previously did not mandate to be paying over to tenants or landlords. Others argue that, hey man, we should be paying all the interest to the tenant and maybe to the PPRA. But that's the confusion. Maybe Danayo, if you can just clarify for us precisely where the interest can go. And obviously the PPRA or the EAB in the past has made good income from that 50% that the property practitioners were paying over. So just your thoughts about the clarification about handling of trust account interest.
Yeah, thank you, Johan. I think it's a very good question. It's a question that has come up a lot of times when we also engage with the property practitioner. Maybe just to put clarity, we have two types of interest. We have interest in terms of Section 54.2. This is the one that where a property practitioner will have a specific instruction to say, you need to invest this money, and this money we know that the interest will go directly to the client, and it has been invested in terms of that Section 54.2. Now, there is this one which is in terms of Section 54.1. Section 54.1 in terms of where you are required to open a trust account and deposit all the monies that are entrusted to a property practitioner. In terms of the regulation that you've indicated, our stance is that in terms of what is provided there is that the interest, which is not specifically mandated by the client, it has to be paid to the PPRA. This is how we read the provision of the new act. However, we have went far and say we need a practice directive. That is what the PPRA now is busy with. We see that we had the input that we got from the property practitioner that why can't then we use the previous regime where there was a 50% split. And we are actually in agreement with that. However, there is internal processes that we need to follow. We have started on those processes. There is a practice directive that is still coming and will be issued just to make sure that we clarify how to administer the interest, how to treat interest, and also qualifying what is provided for in the regulation. Advocate Ladi is the legal analyst, and he's actually busy with that so that we get clarity and certainty for property practitioner in terms of how do we deal with this interest. So the interest that we agree is that, well, the Act says 100%, but however, there will be a practice directive. And with that directive, there will be also consultation so that we hear and get all the inputs and an opinion of the property practitioner in terms of how do they, in their view, they think that the interest should be dealt with. And thereafter, once the consultation phase has passed, it would then go to the board, and then a formal communication will be issued.
Thank you for that. Can I clarify to say the directive will be sounding more like the regulation when it was read in the State Agency Affairs Board Act, where there was a 50-50 split based on non-mandated interest. Is that more or less where the directive will be heading?
It is more or less the directive that will be going because of the input that we've been receiving. And we know that the Act says may, and we have received those that have paid 100%, but we also listen to what the practitioners are saying. We say that, okay, then let's have a consultation, let's issue a directive once the consultation process, but it is going towards that direction.
Good. 100%. I've got more questions, but I think in the case of time, Dani, maybe go over to the community management side. I'm sure there's some pertinent questions at that side as well.
All right. Mfundi, nice to hear that you're moving the needle with NAMA there. First question, in which circumstances are community scheme managing agents exempt from PPRA registration, and what are the criteria?
Thanks, Dani. And thank you for the opportunity for the PPRA to be part of this webinar. I think it's very important that the regulator makes ourselves available to the industry, because we want to make it as painless and as easy as possible in order to serve our clients, the property practitioners, at the end of the day. We do not want a process that's draconian, that they can't get a hold of us. So I think it's very, very, very important that I just mention that at the end of the day. So we have started to register managing agents or property managers as from the 15th of December last year, yes, on the holiday, the Bokke holiday. However, shortly thereafter, in true government fashion, our system crashed completely. And we were offline for a period of 5 weeks. We came online the 16th of January this year. So one can imagine the backlog that we had. So we are registering managing agents, but if your managing agent has been registered before with us, say for instance, you play across different industries, not only you were an estate agent previously and you had an FFC, we can't register you currently because our system is configured that way. So we will give you a Section 4 exemption because we do not want to prejudice anybody. So managing agents, property managers out there, please note that if you have a current FFC, because you played in the space of estate agency, we can't register you now, but we'll give you a Section 4 exemption. Now, the people that does not need to register with us as property managers, Dani, to your question, we are reluctant to give job titles because if you perform property practitioners' duties in terms of our Section 1 of our PPA Act, you must register. But let me give you a few examples. Cleaners, bookkeepers, receptionists, drivers, and tea ladies, they do not need to register with the PPRA because they are not performing property practitioners' duties. As the same goes for a non-executive director. He does not or she does not need to have an FFC. That is you can ask for an exemption in that regard. So yes.
Can you specifically comment on bookkeepers and accountants?
Yes, thank you. That is a good question. And as I said, they are exempted. They're not exempted. They don't need to register. Apologies, because remember, your firm needs to hold an FFC. The directors need to hold an FFC, and the property practitioners need to hold an FFC. But if an accountant or a bookkeeper performs property practitioner duties, they must register. But as it stands now, just a normal bookkeeping accounting function, they do not need to register with the PPRA for an FFC.
I'm going to ask one more question and then maybe back to you. There's a lot of big body corporates and larger HOAs that opt to manage themselves without a managing agent. The trustees very often part-time accountants or even residents are used to manage the financial affairs of these schemes. And larger HOAs often have full-time internal teams that manage all aspects of these communities. So monies are often managed in either trust account or current accounts in the name of those schemes. What are the PPRA requirements around these self-managed schemes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Now, remember, if a community scheme holds their own bank account, or they got their own bank account, let's talk body corporates or HOAs. The property manager does not need to have a trust account in terms of our regulations. I can, for instance, say section 21.4a of the STM-SMA says that if a body corporate has a bank account, the property manager does not need to operate a trust account at the end of the day.
Okay, excellent, Johan.
Good. Thank you, Donnie. A question that comes up, what advice does the PPRA have to rental agents that have complied with the no payment of accreditation fees at communities, typically the section title or HOA estates, but the estates are now refusing access to those rental agents, access to them to be able to service the landlords inside the estates. How do they go about in handling that?
Well, that's a tough question, Johan, and we all know in terms of our legislation, in terms of Section 63, it's an undesirable business practice to pay an accreditation fee, whether they call it a training fee, an accreditation fee, access fee, whatever the homeowners associations and the states call it. It is unlawful to charge it, because I think Danao spoke about transformation. How are we going to get that black property practitioners into these big estates when there is an accreditation fee? And we know it's simply not allowed. However, what can we do? A property practitioner must come forward and lodge a complaint against the respective estate with the PPRA. It's under Clarence Caton. He's the executive for legal and for legal. So it must be lodged with us, and then it must be investigated. Because remember, Johan, our CEO Tatu Ramaidi issued a communication in March of last year stating the consequences of what will happen when these estates persist on asking and charging these fees to property practitioners. So we are taking it very seriously, and our stance is that it is unlawful to charge any property practitioner a fee to trade within that specific estate.